Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. I am Jared Harding, and we are talking today about the key to unlocking your career highs again and again. And I am pleased to have with us Jack Zanger, CEO of Zanger Folkman, and Joyce Palovitz, our Vice President of Delivery Services. Welcome, Jack and Joyce.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jared.
Yep.
Our audience is able to enjoy the triple J today, Jared, Jack, and Joyce. So this is going to be a really fun topic. You can tell by the picture. We are excited, and I think people get really excited about experiencing career highs. And so this is an important topic.
So we want to talk a little bit about some of the common career fears that can get in the way of us thriving in our careers. And we've done a little bit of research and just looking across at some of the literature on what kind of prevents people from thriving. And so we just want to share some of this with you to see if any of these maybe sound a little bit true for you. The first one is when we feel overwhelmed. I can so well remember when I was very early on in my career, and I was promoted from a director of college recruitment to professional development. And I can so remember sitting at this wooden desk with nothing on it and thinking, I don't even know where to start. So there are times in our careers when we feel overwhelmed. And sometimes that's we don't know where to start. We don't know what to do. The problem seems very complex. Sometimes it's we've got so much to do that we just don't know where to go first. We don't know how to prioritize. But when we're feeling overwhelmed, it's going to be a distraction for us, and we're probably not going to be thriving. Another area is rejection. Sometimes have you ever worked for a boss where no matter what good idea, brilliant idea you brought to them, it was just like, no, that won't work here, or your colleagues, that won't work here. And you reach a point where you just say, okay, I'm not even going to try anymore because no matter what I say or do, I feel like it's going to be rejected. That can prevent us from thriving because it prevents us from innovating. Then there's the fear of failure. I mean, what if I try something and it doesn't work? What if I am not really fully prepared for this presentation I'm about to make? And so the fear of failing in something prevents us from possibly bringing our best selves and doing our best work. Then there's the fear of being stuck. I one time had a client, it was a publishing organization in New York City, and publishing was going through a time when there wasn't much career mobility because they were actually in a declining mode. And so we had all these people who were just like, I'm just going to be stuck here in this job for the rest of my professional career. It was a real fear. How do I overcome that? And I can tell you those people were so absorbed with, I'm going to be stuck here, that they couldn't think creatively about their own careers. And then finally, the fear of change. I get really comfortable in my role. I get really comfortable. I know everything that's going on. And then all of a sudden, I'm in an organization that's changing or a market environment that's changing. And somehow the fear of that change starts to prevent me from adapting to the change, from finding new ways to use my skills. So the reason we wanted to talk about these fears is to say awareness is self-correcting. And Jack, when you think about being aware of fears, what does that do for you?
Yeah.
Just to be aware of the fact that these things could be keeping me from thriving.
Well, there's something very liberating about finding out, what your fears truly, thinking about what your fears truly are, and having some templates, having some guidance to how do you contain them and how do you put them in some perspective. Years ago, as a graduate student, I remember hearing a quotation that has really stuck with me through my entire life. The quotation was from a very respected psychologist named Kurt Lewin, who said, "There's nothing so practical as a good theory." And so what we are about to present to you today is what we believe is one of those very practical, really good theories that give you a sense of direction about how to handle these career fears, that will maybe enable you to have greater control over them. And we're convinced that you'll find this to be a very useful model to think about where you are in your career, how you might kind of reflect on what changes would be appropriate to make. So let's just jump right into kind of letting people engage in it.
Yeah, so before we introduce the model, we want to have you participate in our personal engagement snapshot. And this survey is designed to bring some of that awareness to you on how close or far away you may be from experiencing a career high, based on measuring how you currently identify with some of these critical factors that actually make up a career high.
Jack, I think it's time for us to start talking about how we've been high at work.
Career highs.
Not that either one of us has ever done that, but career highs and this idea of extraordinary moments.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, do you remember some of yours or one of
I
yours?
do. So part of the advantage of living as long as I have is that you have a number to reflect on. So just when I finished graduate school, I was hired as a member of a consulting company, and I remember how exhilarating it was to go out and begin to work with clients and to have them kind of expect that you were going to be able to do some things for them that would enable their organizations to improve and grow. And the people I was working with were people I admired a great deal, and I was learning a fantastic amount from them. So that was a real career high for me. And then as the years went by, I began a company and was an entrepreneur. And this company was one of the early Inc. 500. And just receiving that recognition as starting a company and having it join this rather elite group, I guess there's now the Inc. 5000, which has changed a little bit.
I guess what we'd like to do now is to ask all of our audience members to think about, when have you experienced a career high? How did you feel as that career high was happening? And we'll start to see some words come in. And what we're seeing now is I see people felt energized, and I certainly can second that. They felt valued, but they felt valued by the organization. They felt like they were doing valuable work.
Yeah, elevated, challenged.
And we hear these words a lot when we ask professional these questions, don't we, Jack? We
hear them very often.
Yeah. So as a matter of fact, we've heard them so much that we along the way developed a model that would kind of help people really truly understand these factors.
Right. Early on, we promised you that we would present to you a, we hope, very useful model. And so you'll see on your slide there on your screen this Venn diagram that talks about the sweet spot. And we are going to submit to you that a career high often occurs when there is this intersection of three major factors. One is something we'll describe as competence, the second around passion, and the third organizational need. We believe that if you will kind of apply this model to your own career, that it will help you kind of have more frequent career highs and can make them more of a planned event rather than something that just happens to occur because of outside forces that are beyond your control. Let's take each of these three at a time here. Competence. What we mean by competence is that set of skills and behaviors that a person does extremely well. It can be an area of knowledge or some technical information that they possess, some set of leadership behaviors that are unique. But when people talk about their strengths and talk about, what are my strengths, what are they thinking of? This is a way of kind of getting in tune with your competence. Where have you been successful in the past? Where are the places where you've excelled? And this goes all the way back to your school days. Could be your first jobs or several jobs. And just as you reflect, you can ask yourself, what abilities do I seem to have that I end up doing better than other people? The second element of this model is something we've called passion. Passion describes those activities where you just feel an added amount of juice, an added amount of energy, actions that generate for you real excitement. And, some clues to that often are, when you think about what you're going to do today, there are probably some things that you just are looking forward to getting to, and then there are some things that maybe you're not looking forward to getting to. What you are really eager to get to and what you're really kind of relishing maybe helps you to understand where your passions are. There's a kind of a concept that when you're doing things you really love and you have passion for, the clock seems to vanish. You lose all sense of time, and you look up and you look at your watch and you say, "Oh my goodness, it's 2 hours have passed and I wasn't even aware of that." That's a good clue to where your passions exist, and certainly those activities that truly energize you and kind of help you focus your interest with just amazing intensity. Those are your, what we will call, passions. Now, the third element is one that we feel is often missed when this topic of where are your strengths, where are your competencies, that we sometimes don't always pay attention to. Someone's paying the bill, and someone who is your current employer really has some needs that they are expecting you to fulfill. And so how do your skills and abilities connect with what the organization truly needs you to do? And so the questions we would invite you to think about would be these. As you think about your organization, what is your organization's greatest need right now as it generally pertains to the kind of work that you are doing? Second question might be, what accomplishment would make the biggest difference to your team and your team's overall effectiveness? Sometimes it's, what are you uniquely in a position to do that nobody else is going to be able to fulfill? That really helps you kind of see, where do you fit in this question of organizational need? And what would you do, what could you do that would most delight your internal or your external customers? So those are just the kinds of questions that would help you think about this question of organizational need. So there's the model, and we believe that obviously when you overlay in this kind of Venn diagram where your competence and your passion and the organizational need kind of come together, that intersection is truly a career sweet spot, and is the place where, if you can function there, will provide you with the greatest amount of kind of satisfaction and feeling of accomplishment. Now, Joyce is going to talk to us about what happens when those don't always overlap.
When it's not there, and it's all great when it is there, and it's really aspirational, isn't it, to think about, well, how do I make those sweet spots happen? But the truth is, sometimes we find ourselves in what we're going to call a danger zone in our careers, where we're out of alignment, and we're out of alignment over such a period of time that we can no longer thrive there. And so all you have to do is remove one of these circles from that sweet spot, and you start to see what can happen. The first one is if you remove passion from the equation. And we're talking about when you remove passion on an ongoing basis, and you're left with something you do well and something that the organization needs you to do, but the meaning and the energy that you might have had for that at one time is no longer there. And if you stay here very long, work becomes a chore. And I hope that people don't experience this very often, but I've talked to very few people who haven't experienced this at some point in their career. So I think it's probably one of the more common things that can happen. When work becomes a chore, we get burned out. We stop caring, essentially. We stop caring not only about our work, but about a lot of other things. And so the idea, Joe Folkman says that there ought to be a rumble strip here that tells you when you're getting out of your lane and you're moving into territory that is not going to be good for you. And so as immediately when we become aware that work is becoming a chore, we should probably start to think about what's happened here, what's changed, and how do I bring my energy back? What would need to happen for me to be re-energized?
And I think we all have moments during the day when we do something which is kind of a chore. But that's not what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's expense reports for me, Jack.
the budget.
We have our workplace chores, right? But my work is not a chore.
But your work's not a chore.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. The next one is if we remove competence from the equation. Now, a lot of us have been in this position. We call this a novice zone, meaning we're really energized to do the work, and the organization needs us to do it well, but maybe we're new to that. I was coaching a woman recently. She works for an oil and gas company. She's an engineer. She's a very strong contributor. She's an individual contributor. And she's about to be promoted and to be moved into a role where, for the first time, she's going to be managing people. So her passion is high. She's really looking forward to this. The organization needs her to do a really good job, but the organization and she have to kind of bring her ability to manage people up to speed. She's got to bring her competency into alignment. Otherwise, she'll be one of those people who gets promoted as an individual contributor but doesn't really make a contribution because they can't absorb this new skill set. Yeah. And I think we see that happening a lot. It's okay to be in that novice zone for a bit of time, but you've got to then bring your competence level up and be conscious of that. And then the last one is if we remove organizational needs from the equation, then we're in a hobby zone. Now, I have my hobbies. I like hobbies, but work shouldn't be a hobby. When does work become a hobby? Well, if you think about maybe you have a colleague who spends an inordinate amount of time working on a spreadsheet report, or an inordinate amount of time doing work that it starts to be like not really valued and important to the organization. We're very comfortable in this zone because we like the work and we're passionate about it. But if the organization has perhaps moved on and is not really needing us to do that anymore, work has become our hobby. And we can't stay here very long, because if we stay here very long, we're going to be obsolete in the organization. We're not going to be relevant anymore. So again, what we really want to do is bring this all back into alignment around this model. So we want to be aware at every point in time, am I giving myself a chance to thrive professionally? So Jared, I think people are probably more than ready to get their results now.
Yes, I bet they are. All right. So if you haven't found them already, you should have received your results in your inbox by now. The subject line should read, Your Personal Engagement Snapshot Results. And you'll find that it's just simply a report that's a PDF attached to the email. So go ahead, find that email, open up that report. And it did come from me, so it will be from jharding@zfco.com. And sometimes those do end up in the spam folder, so please check there if you can't find it. So we're going to spend just a minute helping you understand how to read your report. And you'll notice that there are two main sections. The first section is the career high scale. This scale indicates how close you are to a career high or to a danger zone. And this was compiled by looking at your responses to questions about the key factors of a career high, which is competence, passion, and organization need. Now, the idea for you portion under the career high scale is a personalized suggestion based on your responses. So it will indicate if you are in a danger zone, which danger zone you may be approaching, and it will give you a little bit of suggestion, something to think about. It will also indicate maybe if you are close or perhaps currently experiencing a career high. And so these responses, based on your responses, that response, that suggestion, just to give you an idea, does it feel right? Does that sound right? And then maybe something for you to think about. You'll also notice we have another marker on that scale, and that indicates the median for all those that have participated in this survey. So in other words, from that point, half the people have scored above that point, and half the people have scored below that point. So it just kind of gives you a little bit of a sense of where you are compared to others. The second section of the report is the commitment index. And we have asked these same 5 questions that we presented to you to literally hundreds of thousands of other individuals. And these were the 5 questions with the strongly agree to strongly disagree options. And we know that how engaged and committed you feel to your organization is something that's strongly correlated with whether or not someone is experiencing or can experience a career high. So this index gives you an idea of that commitment level. And again, you can see the median score here, and it's interesting that for this scale is a bit high. And what's interesting to think is that sometimes we think so many people are disengaged, but over half of the individuals that have participated on those questions, have a fairly high degree of commitment. So we hope that this brings some awareness for you, kind of see where you are, and also compare you a little bit to generally where others have responded, and that this will spark some ideas for you on how you can apply the CPO model to your current situation. So were you surprised by your results? Is it what you expected? We now have a word cloud poll where you can share your reaction to your results with everyone. And this is a fun one because you can also use emojis. So what we're asking is a word or emoji that best represents your reaction to your results. So go ahead and submit those. All right, we see surprise, of course. Some people get surprised. Some smiley faces. Someone said insightful, interesting. And that looks like a taco. That has to be a past participant on our webinars because we had a running joke not too long ago about how Taco Tuesdays is an effective method to inspire a team. And I got into a little discussion with that with Dr. Joe Folkman. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for participating in this word cloud, and it's fun to see everyone's responses or the emoji that you selected to represent your response. And thank you for completing that assessment. We really believe that assessments can play a critical role in deepening the learning experience, even something as simple as a self-assessment. And good news is that the value doesn't end here. Jack, let's help them know how to put all this good information to work.
All right. Well, we'd like to talk with you about a question that often comes up, and that is, as you think about this career high that you maybe had in mind, how long ago was that? And we're going to ask you to kind of think about how long it's been since you had this career high. And I guess the reason why we want you to think about this is that we believe that this model, as we said earlier, can help you to have career highs more often and that they can be more prolonged. Career success comes not just from having one great moment, exhilarating moment in your career, but it comes from having that frequently and having it over a prolonged period of time. And so the question is, how can we apply the concepts of this model to enable us to have longer, more frequent career highs? And Joyce, I know you've got some thoughts about it.
One of the things I love about this is it acknowledges that each of us has a unique set of gifts and talents to offer the organizations that we're part of. And we actually need that level of diversity in our organizations. And so what's incumbent upon us, I think, as professionals is to learn where our sweet spots are, what makes it a sweet spot for us. What are the things that we are uniquely gifted to do? What are the things that we enjoy doing? And how do we find those places in our organizations, or how do we find the organizations that help us thrive in that sweet spot? So part of that is how do I match myself up? But then once I'm there, maybe some of us, as we took the survey, we realized we're in one of those thriving spots. We're in a career high. How do we maintain it? And so it's about really recognizing that is what is true for us, which means I have to think about my job title and my role broadly. I have to look for ways to make sure that I am in my sweet spot. And similarly, I have to be aware that things are constantly changing. Maybe not so much my competence and passion, but certainly organizational needs are constantly changing. And how do I let myself get out of my comfort zone? Because in getting out of my comfort zone, it's going to allow me to stay in that sweet spot. And people are not necessarily going to give us permission to do this. We've got to own this for ourselves. We've got to own our own career development in a way that helps us thrive. It's what we owe to ourselves. And I think we can help others have their sweet spots.
Right. And so we do want to talk with you about how you might use this model, these concepts, to be useful and helpful to your colleagues. Certainly, one thing you can do is to kind of, as you work with people and you reflect on them and where they are in their careers, you can kind of think about, so what are this person's competencies? And where do I see her having real passion? And how does the organizational need right now kind of bring those things all together? So it's a framework that allows you to kind of think about your colleagues, and particularly those people who are your subordinates, in a new and fresh way. The second thing I guess I would observe is that where you see opportunities to help them become clearer about where their passions are, what the organizational need that they are serving, what that really is. If you can help them become clearer about their unique competencies, don't hesitate to initiate conversations. Most of us kind of hold back. We wait too long. We say too little. Occasionally, people say too much, but as a rule, we say too little. And so that's the second thing that we would encourage you to do. You can certainly share this model with people with whom you work. So help others by introducing this model and kind of explain to them how it fundamentally kind of operates and how they might apply this to solving their own problems. Because at the end of the day, we're strong believers that it isn't advice that you give other people that really has the longest term benefit, but it's you're helping them go about and create for themselves a process by which they can solve their own problems. And so if you can help them think about these three elements and how they can use this model as a way of constantly monitoring their own careers, we think you will have done them a real service.
Before I let Jack kind of wrap this up, this is a valuable toolkit that we've created to help you do the things that we've talked about. So this toolkit is going to contain three things. Thing number one is going to be some suggestions on how to get out of each of those danger zones. So when we talk about the novice zone, the chore zone, the hobby zone, we've compiled some suggestions that can help you understand how to get out of those zones. So what are some things that you can do? The second thing is some recommendations on what we've just talked about on how to attain that career high or maintain that career high. And then we've also got a simple conversation guide that will help others think through CPO. So it's a guide that you can use when you're helping others kind of walk through this model for themselves and maybe as you're coaching them. So watch for the follow-up email from this webinar, and that will be sent to the email you use to register. And then you will need to request this toolkit, and then we'll send that out to you. All right, Jack, looks like we have one more poll.
We do have one more poll, and what we're going to ask you to do, if you would, is to tell us what ideas or what actions you are personally taking away from this webinar. And so if you just jump right in and kind of, what are you thinking about doing as a consequence of what's been said and the little questionnaire that you took and the results that you got? So we see here people say, well, I'm going to be more rigorous about assessing my career. I'm going to look for a new opportunity. I realize that I'm in control. So, thank you for these comments. It's helpful feedback for us to know what you truly are taking away. So again, thanks. As you get older, people that you once really held in great esteem and in awe, you often see them more realistically, and that diminishes. In my case, there's one person whom that's not happened for me, and that person is Peter Drucker. The older I get, the wiser Peter Drucker becomes, and the more insightful and the more valuable his ideas. And so we will conclude here by just saying that, as Peter Drucker said, it applies to corporate strategy, but it also applies to our personal lives. The best way to predict the future is to create it. So we hope that these ideas will help you create your own future, your own career. Thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar.